China and Taiwan trade barbs back and forth with each other as China sends massive amounts of military hardware to Taiwan's direction and then immediately has to mock Taiwan for calling in the reservists and a number of other people to come back in and get ready to defend the country. So we'll be talking about that and what our country might do about that and what this could mean for those of us who are very much anti-war. In other news, in the midst of all this happening, our dear leader, the Houseplant-in-Chief, is headed for St. Croix. Yes, not only are we sitting in a position where China's getting ready to pop off and we still have stuff going on in Ukraine, but on top of that, several of his constituents are freezing. But hey, let's not talk about that for this one here. Just, hey, go spend some time in St. Croix. You're going to love it. We promise. But we'll talk about that and what's happening there. Trump World pushes back against Steve Scalise in probably one of the stupidest things they could possibly do, so we'll talk just a bit about that and what's happening there. And the Trump tax returns are getting ready to be released this Friday in just a couple days, so we'll go over that as well. It is going to be all this and more. Have a happy new year and get prepared to see what 2023 is going to bring. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, I used to do this with two screens all the time. Like, that was a normal thing at one point. Just go two screens and everything was happening in one screen, and then I had the news feed off in the other screen, and I got spoiled doing it three screens. And I really wanted to go back and get another card set up here. I'm thinking about once we get recovered from the move, which is happening slower than I expected, but once we get recovered from the move and getting some decent money coming in, I am debating going and getting an actual decent graphics card that does have 4-monitor capability, so I can be really spoiled. But yeah, as of right now, we're still running on two screens. The third screen, which was a hand-me-down from my dad, is not turning on right now. Like, there's a relay inside, and it's trying to turn on, and then it just stops. It's a Pro Scan, if anybody knows anything about those, but yeah, it won't turn on right now. So, and it's because of the power outage that it turned off, and it was on. Like, it started up when I first moved in here, so, well, I've got an idea. I'm going to be moving this desk over to that direction, I think, over the weekend, unless I get really ambitious tonight and do it. And once I do that, then have the monitors back on my desk, because they're sitting on a chest of drawers in front of me right now, which barely fits them. But once I get everything back up on the desk, I think I'm just going to prop a book under what used to be my original third monitor and get it up there, because I can't do this on two monitors. I got way too good at doing it on three, and I can't do this on two anymore. It doesn't work. But anyway, that's enough about my life. It's been an interesting couple days, and I mean, gladly enough, the news has been slow enough that we don't have to go back and run for 2.5, 3 hours at a time, like we used to do on Mondays over stuff catching up over the weekend over on Contemporary in the morning. But still, and I'm very glad we didn't have the internet issues that we had last night. I mean, it's been a week, and things are starting to come back together again. Monday, after getting home from work, the studio was an icy terror because the heater went out. $130 later and an infrared heater later, and we've got heat now again, but it's not being provided by the people who lease this place out, so it still works better than this thing ever did. That's my heater right there. It works better than this thing ever did, so I guess if I've got to spend the money to make sure that I stay warm, I'm going to spend the money to make sure I stay warm. And then Tuesday was the internet issues from hell. Every time I connected, I disconnected for almost a half an hour, but yeah. That's what we have for that. So anyway, we've got a lot of news to go over here. I mean, China's getting ready to go pop off. The Ukraine is going on. Biden's over in St. Croix. Kerry Lake is appealing. There's a lot, but there's not a lot of big stories here. A lot of this is going to be a review of the stuff we have going on, but we're going to talk about it. We'll talk about the finance and everything here over on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, and the No Gimmicks Podcast. Go check out all of that great programming as we set out to build you a better news, culture, and society-based experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. We are building out and trying to get you news from people who have had to make some of the same decisions as you have. So we will see what happens with that. You shouldn't be getting all of your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house, of course. That's always my catchphrase about this, and I still think it holds true. And with that, let's get into the finance and let's get started. Also, by the way, big shout out to everybody who popped in and was chatting yesterday, because we've had the busiest days so far since we moved to the new time slot. We even beat Monday's record, where people were just coming back to make sure I was still here, alive, and raring to go again, because I think a few people thought I died at some point because we were gone for 2 weeks. But yeah, we've had the biggest show back since then. So tell a few friends, get some more people in here, and get some more people chatting. The more you chat, the better the algorithm favors, and the more we'll get some new people in, and possibly start to get some people coming in who don't agree with us, but having the argument as well. But with that, let's talk about the Dow. And I also need to stop eating peanut M&Ms before I get started, because the peanuts get caught up in my teeth. And I don't notice it until after I just start talking. Alright, on the Dow for the day, the Dow was dismal. Again, it tried to rally right at the beginning, but fell off and attempted to rally again and just couldn't hold on, dumping itself below the previous close of 33,241.56 to 32,875.71. We are down 365.85 points, or about 1.1% today, so we'll continue to watch this. And I mean, people are starting to accept the fact. They've been told that the economy is fantastic and they should be investing everything, and it's just not. The 10-year yield is massively high because the government's begging you to put your money into the government so they don't have to tax so many people, but it's not there. And a lot of people know it's not there. So we'll continue to watch this and see where the numbers go every single day. On the Bitcoin fell off also today, having a minor spike throughout the day, but ending its day down 152.80, 152 US dollars and 80 US cents, down just short of a full percent to 16,545.50. Again, I remind you, your Bitcoin is on sale, and this is not something you should see as a big tragedy, especially if you are a crypto enthusiast. Once the economy is there and people want to see if they can get a better rate than what the credit unions and the banks are offering, which is probably a big possibility coming up here in the near future, they're going to look to things like Bitcoin and things like that. Things that actually make money actively, or pretend money, as Ron Helton would point out to us, rather than just putting it into the bank and saying, oh, I hope I get my 0.1% this quarter. But that's what we have coming for that. On the gas prices around the Madison area, we are seeing steady, but we're starting to see all the rest of the ones that were stubborn start to catch up. The BP leaving town is at 289. The quick trip on the north side actually did drop a little bit to 286. 290 leaving town over on 151. Coming out to the west side, we see 290, 290, 290, 290, 280 on the Isthmus, 290 entering the Isthmus, 279 leaving town on Highway 30. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's still kind of holding steady. We're not seeing too big of swings, but the biggest swing on this particular day-to-day map was the BP catching up with everybody else, but, well, we'll see what happens, and I anticipate again that this is going to start going up here, just like we talked about yesterday. Let's grab one from Investors Business Daily. Dow breaks key level, NASDAQ sets bear closing as Apple skids, Tesla ends dive. Yes, that's catching back up again. But guess what? The leftoids won't talk about that, but they'll talk about it when it's dumping out. Dow futures rose slightly after hours, along with the S&P and the NASDAQ. The stock market suffered further losses Wednesday as rising treasury yields, Apple iPhone woes, and soaring China COVID cases added to the selling pressure on the major indices. The NASDAQ is near its bear market low, setting its worst close in over 2 years. The Dow undercut a key level. Apple fell again, setting a fresh bear low. Apple stock is in danger of falling below a $2 trillion valuation. Tesla, which also set another bear market low, rose modestly, but that only trimmed a steep weekly loss. Energy stocks fell as crude and natural gas prices skidded, with natural gas and coal producers hardest hit. Well, we'll see if the gas prices catch up with that, because I'm not seeing the evidence for it right now. But several energy stocks are showing resistance. ExxonMobil, the gas prices, Chevron, Schlumberger, Valaris, and to some extent First Solar are holding up reasonably well. But whether these stocks make real progress from here depends greatly on whether unstable energy prices move higher. After the close, egg producer Cal-Maine, or Calm, reported surging earnings that slightly missed fiscal quarter 2 views. Cal-Maine fell 5% in extended trade, even with revenues soaring 110%, and the egg producer announcing a 135 a share dividend. Shares fell 2.5% to 62.19 in Wednesday's regular session. That pulled Cal-Maine stock back within 5% chase zone of a 60-11 handle buy point, but Cal-Maine could open Thursday below that entry. Sounds to me like IBD is suggesting that you buy eggs. And not just eggs, but egg stock in Cal-Maine. This is not official financial advice, but that's kind of what it sounds to me like they're suggesting. On the futures, Dow futures rose 0.1 versus fair value, the S&P advanced 0.1, and the NASDAQ climbed 0.2. Well, we'll see if it can keep up overnight. I wanted to talk just a bit about housing before we got into everything else here. And I found what I was looking for yesterday. I said I was going to put a pin in some of the housing markets and what's happening with that. And I did put a pin in that, and I did find what I was looking for, because some of the things that we're seeing here are coming from the fact that housing is kind of coming into a bit of a free fall right now. As I mentioned, like the first week that I lived in the La Crosse area, most of the houses that were on the market, that were entering the market, the stuff that was on the market stayed the way it was, but most everything that was entering the market was 50 grand lower than comparable houses that were already on the market. So there's already been one major shift in housing, and I think it's going to get worse for the sellers as we come up here. This is from ALMglobist.com. Housing data suggests a freeze in the real estate market. From Paul Bergeron. Last week's released housing data reflects a freeze in the real estate market, according to Patrick Carroll, CEO and founder of Carroll Company. November's U.S. housing starts data is continuing to decline and signals how 2022's surge in mortgage rates has suppressed buyer demand. No shit, Sherlock. The average middle-class person is going to be spending much, much more than they had anticipated to buy a house when they go to buy a house. And some of them are being knocked and priced out of the inflated housing prices from when people were flush with cash from the Pinko Pox, and that's slowing the housing market? Are you sure? That could not be. The housing market will likely remain weak in the start of 2023, he said. We're also expecting the Fed to continue to raise interest rates, and mortgage rates will stay at new elevated level home buyers will have to adjust to. While single-family home building continues to fall, there are plenty of opportunities in multifamily, as this sector is shown to be resilient this past year, and higher mortgage rates will keep renters on the sidelines. Carol finds Atlanta, Dallas, Tampa to be undervalued markets. These markets remain strong compared to other parts of the country, as we have seen a surge in population growth due to the quality of life, lower cost of living, and business-friendly regulations in these areas, he said. That U.S. existing home sales have fallen for the 10th straight month due to high mortgage rates, limited inventory, and high home prices is squeezing potential buyers out of the market. Despite the negative data, there are opportunities to buy in the market, and those will become clearer as we head into 2023, Carol said. Some of the best deals our company made were completed during previous downturns, so while things will get worse before they get better, we're out there hunting for new deals. Carol said a tipping point to watch for would be the 30-year mortgage rate rising above 6%, an increase in homes for sale, and homes sitting on the market longer than their previous months. And definitely if you're starting to see foreclosures, he added, which is less of a major possibility, but I do want to remind you that one of the things I've told you to watch out for is heating and fuel prices. Now, if the Biden admin can somehow manage to keep that reasonable, we're not going to start to see major dumps like we saw in 2008. But if the natural gas demand starts to spike, especially if we get really, really cold, and I will, with the exception of the cold snap we just got, I will admit to the fact that we actually have been very lucky this winter. Most of our days, I put a coat on for the first time this winter last week when we got the days that didn't get above zero, but for the most part I've been living in a sweatshirt because it really hasn't dropped below 30 for most of this winter. But if we start to get major spikes, people need to heat more, and then that monthly payment starts to eat into their mortgage payment. I mean, they can buckle down, strap down, and see if they can do it, or they can come back and say, okay, I'm out of this, or the food prices are going to be doing some of that as well. Some of the disrepair of things, like with me, where I threw away a good table because it just had fallen into disrepair. And another piece of furniture around my place because it had fallen into disrepair to a point where it just wasn't worth fixing or bringing across the state in this tiny little broom closet that I live in. Now, for me, in this market, no matter what the interest rates go with, even I'm going to be watching for some houses to fall below the levels that they're currently at. But for me, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I do intend to buy and refinance. Even if it's some bargain basement cheap place, because, and this was one of the things that my ex couldn't wrap her head around, because she bought at one of the peaks of the market, not the one that screwed me over so bad, but one that I'm actually still friendly with. She bought at the peak of the market, the top of the market, and she was still paying less than she was paying in rent at the time, but she bought at the absolute peak of the market, so with the high interest rates. And honestly, with that, I do worry for her, because when the interest rates come down, it's going to be really hard for her to go back and refinance her way back out of it, because there's not going to be that much value in the house. Because she bought it at probably way over what it was valued, because that's what the market prescribed at the time. Whereas I'm hoping to grab something where not where the prices bottom out and fall completely out, but where they start to slide. Grab something on a little bit higher interest rate, but still maybe below what the house is worth on the free market. And then somewhere down the line, actually have the equity in there to where I can go back and refinance it, maybe even get a little bit out of it still, and go pay off some loans and stuff like that. Although I'm doing pretty good at where I'm at right now. And do that, and still come out somewhat ahead. But we'll have to watch what the market bears, because nobody's got a crystal ball and nobody can see the future. And with that, we will get started into the main news of the day. Thank you for sticking around for finance, and let's get started. From CBS, before we go into Taiwan, before we talk about Biden, before we talk about anything else, I want to address this. This is coming to us from CBS News. Representative Jamie Raskin says he's been diagnosed with lymphoma. From Carolyn Linton. Before we read anything into this article, I'm going to say that I will not be nice to Jamie Raskin about his policy. But with that being said, I will not be mocking Jamie Raskin about his lymphoma, his cancer, his illness. Unless it, for whatever reason, puts him into a major inability to do his job. Although, being Maryland, yes? Double check that. So I don't want to get that wrong. Someone will come on, fact check. You're getting it wrong just because you hate Jamie Raskin. Yes, Maryland 8. So, given the fact that it's Maryland, and I believe Maryland has a Democrat governor right now, although he's a representative, so it wouldn't really do anything, and the Democrats have already lost control of the House, if it did start to get to a point within this next term where he couldn't do his job, where this is actually doing something to be a detriment to his ability to represent his people, he probably will step down. That's most likely what he's going to do. And then they'll go back and refill it at the end of his term. I don't believe Maryland has a provision to where they have a special election of that. So next term, they'll go elect another Democrat into 8. I do wonder with Raskin if this is a diagnosis that he's had for quite a while. And the reason I say that is the January 6th Commission is about to be disbanded. And I know he's going to be investigated for that too, by the way. And I think they're going to come back and use that as a, you can't investigate him, he's got lymphoma. But the January 6th committee is being disbanded. Which means that he doesn't have to be the tough fighter in the front anymore. I almost wonder if this is maybe a year or so old diagnosis, but they didn't do that because it would discredit his, and I know that it's all for show, but it would in some way discredit his ability to be perceived as a strong anti-Trump fighter on the January 6th committee. But let's read what CBS has to say. Jamie Raskin announced Wednesday he's been diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, which he described as a serious but curable form of cancer, and said he will begin chemoimmunotherapy treatments on an outpatient basis. I expect to be able to work through this period, but I've been cautioned by my doctors to reduce unnecessary exposure to avoid the pinko pox, the flu, and other viruses, Raskin said in a statement. In addition to destroying cancer cells, chemotherapy impairs natural antibodies and undermines the body's immune system. I'm advised that it also causes hair loss and weight gain, although I'm still holding out for hope for the kind that causes hair gain and weight loss. And the entire room let out an uncomfortable laugh. Raskin, 60, added that he plans to get through this and, in the meantime, to keep making progress every day in Congress for American democracy. Hegemony, that's what he means. Democrat hegemony, not American democracy. My love and solidarity go out to all of the families managing cancer or other health condition in this holiday season, and all the doctors, nurses, and medical personnel who provide us comfort and hope, Raskin said. Diffuse large B-cell lymphoma is one of the most common subtypes of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, according to the Mayo Clinic. It's a type of cancer that begins in the lymphatic system, which is part of the immune system, and in which white blood cells called lymphocytes grow abnormally and can form growths or tumors throughout the body, Mayo Clinic said. So, I will get the stuff that may be unpopular with some of my viewers, which right now, anybody who's going to be seeing this is going to be seeing it on the replay anyway, because in spite of the busy night we had last night, we're having a slow night tonight. But what I will say to this is, Raskin, I hope that you get through this. I hope you get better. and I do hope you live a long and healthy life. I still think that you are an asshole. I still think that you are terrible for our government, terrible for the House, and you think that the will of Maryland should be the will of the rest of the country, and you should be able to impose it by force upon the rest of us. And I understand all that. I will not be hassling you over your disease. Whether you go bald, whether you get fat, whether you get any of these things. In this channel, and I will remind you, if you're watching this on the replay or watching this live ever, that that's also off limits in the chat. We will be attacking Jamie Raskin relentlessly for his policies, but not for his illness. And with that, we move on and talk about China. From Axios, Beijing sends dozens of warplanes across the Taiwan Strait. From Rebecca Falconer. China's military deployed to areas around Taiwan 71 planes and 7 ships in 24 hours, according to the Taiwanese Defense Ministry. The Chinese military's biggest incursion into Taiwan air defense zone since Speaker Pelosi visited the self-governing island in August occurred as Beijing denounced the U.S. over President Biden signing into law Friday a defense spending bill that included provisions for Taiwan. You didn't actually think that was going to go over well, did you? The Taiwanese Defense Ministry said in a statement, it detected 47 Chinese aircraft crossing the median of the Taiwan Strait between 6 a.m. Sunday and 6 a.m. Monday, local time. The Eastern Theater Command of the Chinese Army said in a statement, it conducted joint combat readiness patrols and joint firepower strike drills around Taiwan in a resolute response to the current escalation of collusion and provocation from the United States and Taiwan. Chinese warships and military aircraft carried out a series of live ammunition drills for days near Taiwan last August following Pelosi's visit to the democratically run island that Beijing regards as a breakaway province. This is a breaking news story. Please check back for updates. What's happening here right now? Now, number one, China is going to be the aggressor on this, no matter what it is that you think about the relationship between Taiwan and China. Because Taiwan literally just wants to be left alone, far away from China. Now, however, with that being said, the news media actually might try to spin this into a good thing for China. I don't know that they would have a leg to stand on, and I think a lot of the left constituency that just buys into everything that they have to say would see right through that in a moment. But with this being said, the government, including most of the Democratic coalition, is bound by a treaty and agreement with China that we have to support China in this, and I don't know why, and I don't care for it myself. You should be able to make a decision on whether or not you support China or Taiwan on your own, not necessarily do whatever it is that the government has to tell you. I mean, that's part of the reason we see so much of support and such a mess in Ukraine right now, is because the government is telling the vast swath of the people that depend on the government that they have to support Ukraine, otherwise they're Trump-supporting Russian Putin puppets. And a lot of them believe that. But as far as this goes, Taiwan does believe that they have done the proper paperwork to break away and not be a part of China, and just want to be left alone on their island. From what I understand, they're not going to be making an incursion onto mainland China, or West Taiwan, if you call it, and trying to take back more territory. They kind of just want to chill out on the island and do their thing and make chips. So from the way that I see it, China's going to be the aggressor no matter what. But the tits for tats don't stop with that. From CNN. Taiwan extends mandatory military service period to counter Chinese threat. From Eric Chuang. Chuang? Is that how it is? I think so. Taiwan will extend the period of mandatory military service for all eligible men from 4 months to a year amid rising threats from China, President Tsai Ing-wen said at a news conference in Taipei on Tuesday. 4 months of mandatory military training can no longer suit the needs of Taiwan's defense, she said, adding that while extending the service period was a difficult decision, it was necessary for safeguarding the island's democratic way of life. Nobody wants the war. The Taiwanese government and its people do not want it, nor does the international community want it, but peace does not fall from the sky, she added. We need to actively prepare for the war to prevent the war, and we need to be able to fight a war to stop the war. The new conscription period, which will be implemented at the start of 2024, will apply to men born after 2005, she said. Boy, does that ever make you feel old. And that, by the way, is starting next year when people start turning 18. I'm going to tell you right now, I can still remember the thrill of seeing that Wii card calendar turn to 1984, when I could legally start buying cigarettes, and then 3 years later when I could start buying booze. The move marks a U-turn for Taiwan, a self-governing democracy of 23.5 million people, which had shortened the mandatory conscription from 1 year to 4 months as recently as 2018. Service guarantees citizenship. Still haven't read that book, by the way. It comes as China increasingly asserts its territorial claims over Taiwan, which the ruling Chinese Communist Party in Beijing has never controlled, including sending 47 aircraft across the median line of the Taiwan Strait on Sunday, its largest incursion into the island's air defense zone in recent months. According to Taiwan's defense ministry, all conscripts under the new system will be required to undergo 8 weeks of basic military training before 44 weeks of ground training. That's 52, that's a year. The monthly salary of conscripts will also be raised from about $195 to more than $650 a month, Tsai said. I don't know where you're getting that money, but, sometimes we don't ask questions that we know we're never going to get answered. Maintaining peace is reliant on national defense, and national defense relies on every citizen, she said. Yeah, that's why, that's in theory why we have so many guns in this country, but there are plenty of people out there trying to stop that. A White House spokesperson welcomed Taiwan's announcement in a statement to CNN, saying it underscores Taiwan's commitment of self-defense and strengthens deterrence. The spokesperson said the U.S. will continue to assist Taiwan in maintaining a sufficient self-defense capability, in line with our commitments under the Taiwan Relations Act at our One China policy. The U.S. will continue to support a peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues and oppose any unilateral changes in the status quo by either side, the spokesperson said. So, a few things getting ready to pop off over there. China slams Taiwan's cannon fodder conscription decision. Coming to us from Reuters. China's government criticized Taiwan on Wednesday for seeking to use the Taiwanese people as cannon fodder by extending compulsory military service from 4 months to 1 year starting in 2024. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of compulsory anything. But I do see where... I can't believe I can honestly say I can see China's position on this, but I can see their position on this. Service guarantees citizenship, but you have to be a citizen, which means you have to serve. And yes, they're absolutely right. These people who are conscripts, who really maybe even don't even want to be in the military, especially if there are dissenters among there, those are going to be the people who are right upon the front of the line. Trust me, as much as both sides try to say that they're anti-war, they would love to have a major war in this country, or a major proxy war that this country is going to wind up fighting, where they can go send all of their political dissenters too. Oh, you want to criticize the Democratic Party? Oh, hey, no, your number came up. You're drafted, and you're going to wind up being in the front line in Iran. Right on the front, actually. Yeah, no, go be a good little meat shield. Responding to a question on Taiwan's decision to lengthen the period of military service, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said that struggling for the great task of achieving national reunification is immeasurably significant. Dying for Taiwan independent separatist activities is completely worthless. Oh, that's wartime propaganda, too. We believe Taiwan compatriots are highly principled. They will not be put up as cannon fodder by Taiwan independent separatist forces, Wang told a regular news conference. So, they're trading barbs back and forth with each other. Mishka puts out a video from, looks like Wake Up America, talking about China sends 71 planes and 7 warships to Taiwan. What do you think Biden will do? Let's listen.
China has sent 71 planes and 7 warships to Taiwan in just the last 24 hours. This in a massive display of force in response to Taiwan-related provisions in that same $1.7 trillion spending bill, which passed quietly on Friday. Those provisions include weapons similar to what we've already sent to Ukraine, so Taiwan can defend itself if China does decide to invade Taiwan. China has sent 71 planes and 7 warships to Taiwan in just the last 24 hours. This in a massive display of force in response to Taiwan-related provisions in that same $1.7 trillion spending bill, which passed quietly on Friday. Those provisions include weapons similar to what we've already sent to Ukraine, so Taiwan can defend itself if China does decide to invade Taiwan. China has sent 70...
So, well, it's all ramping up, and what's funny about this is that the Chinese government is saying that this is partially because the U.S. is ramping up the rhetoric, which sounds to me an awful lot like what Mr. Putin is saying as well. So that's what we have for that. All right, what else do we have? Let's talk about Biden. Now, I want to remind you all of heavy criticism that came to one Theodore Cruz for deciding that he wanted to go to Cancun in a position where there was not really anything that he could do for the people of Texas while they were trying to rebuild their grid and everything else. The Bell cyclone just happened like 4 days ago. There's still communities that are rebuilding. There's still power companies that are working to make sure that the power is turned back on. And, you know, heaters are blown out, like that one. Heating systems, pipes are burst. There's still flooding out of there. There's also criticism against one Marjorie Taylor Greene for also wanting to go to somewhere warm in the midst of winter storms to go vacation while her constituents were freezing. Although my experience with Georgia is it doesn't really get that cold down there. But in spite of all this, nobody has word one to say in the mainstream media about this story here. Biden heads to St. Croix as winter blast killed dozens, cancels 10,000 flights. But I guess they're not canceling Air Force One. From Stephen Nelson and Mary Kay Jacob over at the New York Post. Want to get away. President Biden left the White House on Tuesday, looking just like this. Hold on, let me kill the music. God, I need to have 3 screens again. I feel like such a whining millennial baby demanding I need to have 3 screens again. Oh, there's no audio on this one. Yep, there he goes. Getting ready to go to St. Croix. Come on, fall up the stairs, fall up the stairs, fall up the stairs. why the other one didn't. Honest question. Serious question. Why stairs? Like, with all the money that they have out there, and I know that they come into a terminal and leave in a terminal, and it probably typically is a public airfield to someplace, but especially when they're going from DC, is there not a terminal somewhere at Joint Base Andrews where they can extend the ramp and let them walk in from indoors? Did they always have to climb the stairs to go out there, or is it just so they can stand up at the top of the stairs and fall up the stairs and go? I never understood that. Now, if you're like coming into O'Hare or something, I can understand the security aspect of that, and I can see why they would maybe want to have them not go through the regular terminal if they're coming down into like Chicago, Milwaukee, something like that. But in DC, like, seriously? Is there not a private building they can either commission, build, or a section at Dulles they can take over on security concerns and actually have them walk across the ramp? That's so weird to me that the president always walks up the mobile stairs to go up on Air Force One. So weird to me. Let's keep reading rather. President Biden left the White House Tuesday for a tropical vacation in St. Croix to ring in the new year, as much of the country deals with extreme cold and snowfall that has killed at least 65 people and canceled 10,000 flights since Christmas Eve. The 80-year-old commander-in-chief will bask in the Caribbean sun near an in-ground pool at a 3-bedroom beachfront villa with sweeping views of the largest of the U.S. Virgin Islands. And then he might slip over to Epstein Island. Is there still anybody there? Meanwhile, travel chaos, widespread power outages, and rising deaths caused by the single-digit weather continue across the Midwest and East Coast, but especially in western New York, where at least 32 people died in Buffalo's Erie County amid more than 4 feet of snow. It's unclear who owns the vacation property or whether Biden will be paying for his stay, though he has a long record of staying for free at houses of wealthy Democratic donors. The homeowner declined to identify themselves or disclose whether Biden will pay when contacted through the real estate company that handles the leasing. Well, I don't know, because Virgin Islands is a territory, if they fall under the same sort of regulations, laws, and privileges that go in the rest of the U.S., but, I mean, in Wisconsin, mortgages, property ownership, and the plat are recorded in the public record. So it shouldn't really be that hard to figure out who owns that building, whether it be a corporation or whether it be a private owner. If it follows the same pattern as the rest of the United States. Biden boarded Air Force One with Jill Biden and 2 of his grandchildren, Natalie and Hunter, plus first daughter Ashley Biden and her husband, Howard Krine. Oh, so he'll have some company in the shower. It's unclear if other members of the family, who usually attend such trips, such as scandal-plagued first son Hunter, are also traveling. The president has stayed at the same St. Croix property during prior visits to the U.S. territory during his vice presidency. Now, why is this important? Number one, I mean, we see what's going on in the country right now. That's Buffalo. And again, it didn't really get that snowy here. Like, we didn't get that here in Wisconsin, which is surprising because usually we outsnow everybody. Is that a 95 Regal? Boy, I haven't seen one of those in 20 years. Anyway, that's a completely different topic. But also, the other question to be asked about this comes when we talk about the vacations, of which there are many. Now, the Donald liked to go back out and go to his own hotels and have the Secret Service with that and hook the taxpayers with the accommodations for the Secret Service and blah blah blah, and go down there and blah blah blah, and their food and their everything else. Go down there. Guys, it's gotta cost a pretty penny to lodge Secret Service in the U.S. Virgin Islands and feed them. Get them all on the plane and get everything else out there. And he's either in Rehoboth Beach, somewhere down south in the warm, for a 3-day weekend, every single weekend. The news media is full of hypocrisy on this one. Completely. But, again, you can expect that from a lot of these people. You really can. Let's see. Got another one here from the New York Post. I'm going to skip the Associated Press one in the middle. Let's see. So we've got some information on the accommodations President Biden will ring in 2023 at the tropical island home of wealthy business owners Bill and Connie Neville, who earlier this month were among the select group admitted to the president's first White House state dinner. The Nevilles made the 338-page guest list for the December 1st gathering of billionaires, celebrities, and politicians in honor of French President Emmanuel Macron after previously lending their 3-bedroom beachfront villa to Biden. Biden traveled to St. Croix at the U.S. Virgin Islands late Tuesday with First Lady Jill Biden and other members of his family to celebrate the new year and potentially to decide whether to launch a 2024 re-election bid. He left the frigid continental U.S. after a Christmas weekend winter blast killed at least 65 people and canceled more than 10,000 flights. It's unclear if the vacation was planned before or after the Bidens treated the Nevilles to the lavish banquet on the taxpayers' dime, but the first family is not paying for the use of the home, which features an in-ground pool, lush landscaping, and sweeping views along with the direct beach access. We're going to go out on a limb and say after. That's what I'm going to say with that one. So, enjoy your trip while more and more people are suffering up here. Here's an interesting one with video. No, we don't have video on this one. I thought we did. Regardless, MSDNC host is confronted with reality check after defending Joe Biden's history of lying to slam George Santos. From Chris Enlow. Chris Hayes received a prompt reality check on Tuesday after downplaying Democrats who embellished the past to slam George Santos. Santos, a Republican from Long Island, admitted this week to lying about his personal background, education, and employment history. On Tuesday, writer Jonah Goldberg criticized Democrats for conveniently forgetting how often their leaders have been caught embellishing their biographies. I think Santos is a total embarrassment and has no place in public life, Goldberg tweeted, but a lot of folks on this site dinged him seem to have forgotten how much both the current president and his predecessor embellished their accomplishments. In response, Hayes drew distinction between Santos and President Biden, ultimately minimizing Goldberg's point. I think there's a line between normal politician BSing and conman serial lying. And basically, in Chris Hayes' mind, that's whether or not you have a D or an R next to your name. And he's got infractions on either side of that line. I mean, it would have been a pretty big deal if it turned out Biden didn't actually have a law degree. It probably would be, but it's also a big deal to know that he graduated at the bottom of his class. Hayes' attempt to dismiss Goldberg's point was confronted with Biden's history of serial lying. T. Beckett Adam explains, sure, Biden lied about being the first in his family to go to college, lied about his scholarship, lied about finishing top half of his class, lied about having 3 undergrads, lied about being a professor, but by God, the law degree is real. Mark Hemingway, the thing is, Biden was busted for plagiarizing 5 entire pages in law school. he probably shouldn't have a law degree. It's fair. What if it turned out he cheated his way to a law degree by plagiarizing 5 full pages from a published law review? Yeah. Biden lies about the most important moments of his life all the time, from the tragic death of his daughter and the first wife to the number of grandchildren he has. He lies incessantly about education. Find something biographically he doesn't lie about. Hell, he's not even Irish, one person said. That I didn't know, actually. Con-man serial lying is literally who Joe Biden is. He says he played football in college, was in the military, his son died in Iraq, he got arrested meeting Nelson Mandela, got arrested for supporting desegregation. He actually argued for segregation, which is true, by the way. And says he beat up Corn Pop, one person explained. Here's one which is similar to what I said. What Chris Hayes means is that there's a difference between serial lying conman on my political team and serial lying conman on the other political team. Another person, and for you that line is party affiliation, again. So you're okay with Biden lying, plagiarizing, just flat out making things up for decades. Why did he have to drop out of the 1988 presidential race again, one person asked. Yeah. And just like I said, I'm no defender of Santos at this point, but see, the problem is for me, that was baked into the cake. If a politician is ever speaking to me, I make the assumption that he is lying. I don't care what the letter is after his name. I don't care what platform he has, how much I like his policies or the policies he pushes for. If I see a politician speaking, the assumption is he's lying. And I think most people who watch this are going to say the same thing. From the Daily Wire. Trump world warns against pushing Steve Scalise for House Speaker. This is really stupid, folks. From Ryan Saavedra. House Republican Whip Steve Scalise is coming under fire over reports he is quietly being prepped to make a run for House Speaker, as Kevin McCarthy looks to wrap up the remaining support that he needs to get the position next month. McCarthy is widely viewed as the Republicans' choice, best able to bring together his party's various factions. That is a lie. A consensus builder is critical, given that the GOP eked out a slim 222 to 213 majority in last month's midterm elections. So, actually put up a consensus builder, not Kevin McCarthy. Politico reported last week that a small group of lawmakers approached Scalise and told him to just be ready in case McCarthy did not win over the 5 Republicans still holding out on backing his bid for House Speaker. The Republicans who have come out publicly against McCarthy include Gates, Ralph Norman, Bob Good, Matt Rosendale. Oh, come on. Fuck off. And Andy Biggs. Republicans in top inner circles have warned against efforts trying to boost Scalise for the position. Team Hageman repeatedly asked Congressman Scalise for assistance, and unlike the rest of House leadership, he refused to lift a finger against Cheney. A GOP operative closely involved in the race against soon-to-be former Rep. Liz Cheney told the Daily Wire it was baffling, almost like he was under her spell. A former White House aide involved in immigration negotiations on Capitol Hill warned that Scalise is not solid on immigration, which comes as the southern border has been in a state of crisis the entire time that President Biden has been in the White House. We always knew that we were dealing with during any immigration debate, but behind the scenes, Scalise was always trying to push any bill to the left and loosen amnesty restrictions, the former aide told the Daily Wire. Scalise has also faced opposition from notable conservative media personalities online, including John Cardillo, who wrote, Scalise never condemned Liz Cheney and in fact never threw support behind her opponent. So, your line is the person has to come up and say, Cheney evil, orange woman, or white haired woman evil, new person good. Posobiec added, amnesty is always a red line for the MAGA movement. Look, here's the thing. I am not Team Scalise by any stretch of the imagination. I've made my thoughts clear. If I could choose any representative in the Republican Party to be the Speaker of the House, it would be one Thomas R. Massey. And that's the only choice that I would come out and would be happy about. Scalise is a consolation prize to me. For a couple of reasons. Number one, he does have a good bridge on all of the factions of the Republican Party, and he has worked with all the factions of the Republican Party. And his job as the whip is literally to come back around and bring people together to get everybody in line and vote. To get all the votes together into one place. That's literally his job. Which I think that would make him a good speaker. Trying to get the coalition together to make sure that you don't have dissenters on your 222 to 213 majority. But, as always, if I had to choose any representative, it would be one Thomas Massey. And nobody else. If I got to have my perfect Congress based on the makeup that we have. But I also know that a lot of America, because of the propaganda against the Libertarian Party, would be strongly against Massey as Speaker. I don't think Massey could get up 20 votes. But because he kind of stands against what all the rest of Congress has to offer. Let's get some Kari Lake news. From AZ Central. Kari Lake appeals her loss in election lawsuit. Judges order to pay rival $33,000 in fees. I don't think this is the worst thing in the world, honestly. If she believes that she's in the right, and, by the way, speaking to a judge in Maricopa County, the county that she is actively trying to find whether or not they had screwed her or not, a government official from that county. You know, we're to this point where, hey, we investigated ourselves and found we did nothing wrong. I'm not opposed to her going out to try to find a neutral arbiter that's not in the county. So yes, an appeal I think is in order for this one. From Mary Jo Pitzel. Kari Lake is appealing her election challenge loss, asking the State Court of Appeals late Tuesday to reconsider all 10 counts she originally cited in her lawsuit, as well as a decision to pay $33,000 in fees to Katie Hobbs' legal team. Lake, a Trump-endorsed Republican, also indicated she will ask the state Supreme Court for direct review of the appeal. Her filing comes hours after Maricopa County Superior Judge Peter Thompson closed her case, which played out over a 2-day trial, and then a holiday weekend of court filings between plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys over sanctions and legal fees. Lake lost her race for Arizona governor to Katie Hobbs by 17,117 votes, honk honk. Lake is asking the appeals court to examine Thompson's dismissal of 8 of her original 10 complaints, Thompson's December 24th ruling rejecting the remaining 2 counts, and Tuesday's decision on fees, essentially questioning every decision he made in her case. And I think that's appropriate. Now, I am to the level where I would almost say it's appropriate to see if somebody in Nevada can maybe even come in and have a change of venue off of this. I'm still a little bit leery of somebody who is suing the state being tried by the state she is suing, essentially. And I don't know, because again, we didn't get to hear evidence on 8 of the 10 counts. We only got to hear evidence on 2 of the counts. I don't know where this would go if all 10 counts were able to be heard. And I don't know if she's got the standing to take all 10 counts. I think that the problem with this, and with Peter Thompson coming out here and only allowing her 2 counts to be to be reviewed is that I read the list of counts, and I don't think she has 10 counts. I think she has 5. But I would like to hear all 5 of those heard by the court. I think 5 of those counts, and I would have to go back and review them for certainty, but I do believe 5 of those counts could have been thrown out, but not 8. Will it go anywhere? Probably not. I have resigned myself to the fact that Katie Hobbs is going to be the next governor of Arizona, honk honk. A selected position, much like the presidency currently, honk honk. But we'll continue to watch that one and see where it goes. From CNN, U.S. House bans TikTok from official devices. Good. TikTok has been banned from electronic devices managed by the U.S. House of Representatives, according to an internal notice sent to House staff. Users who install the short-form video app on any House mobile device will be asked to remove the software, according to the notice, which was provided to CNN by the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. You guys know my feelings on TikTok or any other personal app on a government device. And by the way, it's not just TikTok. Now, for some of these people, Twitter is going to be part of their job and Facebook is going to be part of their job. And I understand that. But in those situations, you should be using your official government account, not your personal account, as well. No matter what it is, what position you're in, it should be... The only thing that should be installed on your government phone, if you're working for the government, is a Twitter with your official government account, your Facebook with your official government account, whether it be a fan page or the official one that you're provided from the Department of State. The calculator and any apps that you actually need to use to do your job. And if you want to share memes on your Instagram or your personal Twitter account, or watch idiotic teenagers dance for 30 seconds at a time, come on, it's 2022. You don't have a personal phone? Seriously? The notice identifies TikTok as a high risk to users due to the number of security risks. Separately, the U.S. government is soon expected to ban TikTok from all federal devices as part of legislation included in the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill awaiting Joe Biden's signature. Dude, the government ran out of money on Friday. No, they did pass a extremely short-term spending package until this one got through. That hammered through both houses, and I think it was like 2 weeks long. So Biden could have time to go to St. Croix and ring in the New Year's. The move comes after more than a dozen states in recent weeks have implemented their own prohibitions against TikTok on government devices. TikTok has previously called efforts to ban the app from government devices a political gesture that will do nothing to advance national security interests. TikTok declined to comment on the House restrictions. Now, I am against TikTok. I do think it's Chinese spyware. And honestly, I really think it's stupid. I've tried to look, because, most people who have TikTok will share their videos up to Snapchat, Instagram as Reels, etc. I've tried to get the appeal of TikTok, and I don't get it. I don't understand. I've given it an honest chance, not using the app, obviously, because I do believe, yes, that it is Chinese spyware, but for me, I'm in the position where I will not tell you what you can and can't do on what you own, what your personal property is. I'm not that kind of person. If you want to put 10,000 porn viruses on a mobile phone, ruin your relationships with everybody else, I'm not here to stop you. I can criticize you. And I do so freely and openly. I will criticize you for that behavior. But ultimately, it's your device. It's your life. And I think when the bottom does fall out and you come out and ask for help, I will put my hand out there for you. But I will also remind you, you did this to yourself. I'm kind of in a dichotomy there. But when that device is owned by somebody else, your company, the government that you work for, no, they do get the final say as to what it is that you have on that phone, or tablet, or laptop, or anything else. They still get the final say at that point, because they owned it. They pay the bill for it. They pay the IT for it. And if you don't like it, go and get a regular phone, a personal phone. I know a lot of people that carry two phones, their personal one and their work phone. The Trump tax returns are coming, folks. Trump tax returns to be released to the public on Friday, House committee says. From Dara Gregorian, Ryan Nobles, Lauren Strickler, and Julia Sirkin. The House Ways and Means Committee plans to release Donald Trump's tax returns on Friday, a spokesperson for the committee said on Tuesday. The committee voted to make the returns public in a party line vote last week and was initially planned to release the documents as early as last Wednesday. But the disclosure has been delayed as staffers are still redacting sensitive information like social security numbers from the documents. Yeah, okay, like that hasn't already been leaked. The assortment of 6 years of Trump's personal tax returns and some of his business returns are expected to be placed into the congressional record on Friday as part of the House's pro forma session. The latest delay was the first reported by CNN. The clock is ticking for the committee, which will turn over control to Republicans when the new Congress is sworn in next week. The committee obtained the returns in November after years of court fights for the closely held documents, which other presidents have routinely made public in the last 4 decades voluntarily because you don't have a case to go back and demand them because you are the government and you need a warrant to do that. Which means you actually need to be investigating something and admit you're investigating something, not just looking through something here and saying, okay, we know that if we get these, we're going to go find your crime. Trump's refusal to release the returns led to a swirl of suspicions about what he was trying to hide. Nothing. It's still none of your... I know I've slipped twice in this episode already, but it's still none of your goddamn business. Foreign business dealings, a smaller fortune than he claimed publicly, or whether he was paying less in taxes than the average American, his wealth won't be on his tax returns, you morons. That's tied up in property, and buildings, and businesses, and banks. And I want to know exactly, because these people are going to look at this, they're going to say, see, it's right there. And I want to know from all these leftoids who think that this is going to be the smoking gun that destroys Trump for life and makes sure that he has to be destitute and in prison and this and that and the next thing. Exactly what line on your federal tax return do you report your tax fraud? Where in this document are you going to find the tax fraud? Because most of these people who are demanding this have never seen a tax return that actually has real property on it, real wealth on it. A tax return from somebody who doesn't make an hourly wage. They've seen their own. And they know how they try to get around paying all their Starbucks tips. They've never seen an actual tax return where somebody is getting capital gains. They don't know what any of this looks like. They sure as hell aren't going to be able to go back in there and go and find the smoking gun of all the fraud. Get your children out of these public schools. Teachers exempt from Freedom of Information Act court rules. Experts warn parents should be concerned about public school transparency. You bet your ass you should be. From Candace Hathaway. Earlier this month, Michigan's Oakland County School Circuit Court ruled that school teachers are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Experts told the Daily Caller News Foundation as the ruling raises concerns over public school transparency. Judge Jacob James Cunningham determined that on December 15th that public school teachers are exempt from producing school-related documents in response to the FOIA request because they are not considered public bodies, and therefore their documents are not considered public records, but they are. On March 14th, Mackinac Center Legal Foundation filed a lawsuit against the Rochester Community Schools District on behalf of Carol Beth Litkui, a parent with children enrolled at the school in the district. Litkui argued that the district has refused to provide her with certain course materials for the class History of Ethnic and Gender Studies, thereby violating FOIA law. It's incredibly disappointing that the district continues to refuse to be transparent and has stonewalled my efforts to learn more about what's being taught in the classroom, Litkui said. According to the lawsuit, the district requested that Litkui pay $419 deposit to receive certain materials she asked for by a FOIA request. Litkui claimed that the district provided her with some documents, including a unit plan and an icebreaker assignment, but all other materials she requested were denied. The district argued that some of the documents were copyrighted material and others did not exist. Schools must make the curricula available to parents under Michigan law, said Steve Deli, Director of Open Government and Transparency to the Mackinac Center. Despite this, Rochester Schools has repeatedly failed to fulfill this legal obligation. It shouldn't take months of back and forth, hundreds of dollars, and a lawsuit just to see what's being taught in your community. Well, I've got a few questions about this. Now, number one, first and foremost, if this is Michigan law, and I don't know Michigan law, so I don't know if this is true or not, but if the claim in the Blaze article is true, and Michigan law requires that lesson plans be made available to parents, then you're not running afoul of the FOIA Act, you're running afoul of Michigan law, first and foremost. Before anything else, you are running afoul of Michigan law. But you should always be concerned if your school is working this hard to make sure that you don't know what's being taught in that school. And whatever happened to syllabuses, by the way? And here's the big kicker to Litkui. Can't you ask your kids to see the textbook, the documentation, anything like that? I mean, some of this, of course, has got to be mouth to ears. But there's got to be some sort of documentation and something that's getting eyes to ears. Or, I'm sorry, paper to eyes. It's getting transmitted to your students somehow or other. And are they not bringing back homework? I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a failing on a lot of ends here. And it's not just the Michigan schools. I think there is a failing on the parents' end, and I do think that there is a failing on the Michigan government's end. Not necessarily the federal government and the Freedom of Information Act, but definitely the Michigan government, if they are not enforcing the law, that they do have to provide the lesson plans to parents. That's a problem. Fix it. From CNN, in an effort to strain further relations with China, U.S. to require travelers from China show negative COVID test results before flight. What has that stopped anywhere? We did that for 2 years just to get into some buildings, and this crap still ran rampant across the country. and yet they don't also take effect for another 2 weeks. The U.S. will require all travelers from China to show a negative pinkopox test result before flying to the country, as Beijing's rapid easing of pinkopox restrictions leads to a surge in cases. Passengers flying to the U.S. from China will need to get a test no more than 2 days before flying, federal health officials said, and present proof of the negative test to their airline before boarding. The test can either be PCR or antigen self-test, administered through a telehealth service. The requirements will apply to both passengers flying directly to the U.S. from China, as well as passengers flying through popular third-country gateways, including Seoul, Toronto, and Vancouver. Passengers who test negative more than 10 days before their flight can provide documentation of their recovery in lieu. Passengers who test positive more than 10 days before their flight can provide documentation of their recovery in lieu of a negative test result. The new result takes effect at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on January 5th. If this is such a disaster and such a major public health emergency, why are you waiting 2 weeks to implement it? But it's just like every other restriction that they put out there that had a lead-up time and everything else. These things are major emergencies. But we can wait 2, 3 weeks, a month before we go implement them. Here's the announcement of the policy change, but it doesn't take effect for a month. And again, my biggest problem here is, yeah, you can put these requirements in there all the time, but it's still going to get here. If it's going to come here, it's going to come here. You couldn't put the genie back in the bottle the first time. Why the hell do you think you can put it back in the bottle the second time? And the last one, coming to us from CNN. Going back to Michigan for just a moment. Ringleader of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot sentenced to 19 and a half years in prison. From David K. Lee. A man convicted of playing a key role in the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer was sentenced to 19 and a half years in prison on Wednesday, more than what was meted out to a co-defendant. A prosecutor called 47-year-old Barry Croft Jr. an American version of Omar Abdel Rahman, the blind sheik who masterminded the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. Why? Because the FBI came out and said, hey man, you want to go kidnap the governor? Croft and co-defendant Adam Fox were convicted in August of conspiracy to commit kidnapping and to use a weapon of mass destruction to attack Whitmer, who drew hatred of the far-right groups for her efforts to curb the spread of the pinkopox in 2020. Let's not mention the fact that there were 13 people in this group and 7 of them were FBI agents. I think it was more than that. Wasn't it like 11? Fox was sentenced to 192 months or 16 years in prison on Tuesday by District Judge Robert Jonker, setting the stage in a Grand Rapids courtroom for Croft's fate and sentence of 235 months. While Jonker stopped short of issuing life sentences sought by prosecutors, the judge largely agreed the government's stance that Croft fueled the plot with dangerous rhetoric. And the FBI. The judge called Croft the idea guy who egged on co-conspirators with wrong and twisted ideology. I do think Mr. Croft as more of a seriously culpable, more so than even Mr. Fox, Jonker said. I think he was the person who gave Mr. Fox something to grab onto. No, I think that was the FBI. Assistant U.S. Attorney Nils Kessler said that Croft needs to go away for an extended period of time to protect the public and also not spill the beans about the FBI. This man is thoroughly radicalized, Kessler said. He hasn't changed his viewpoint. Yeah, the dissenter is getting put away for life. Aren't you excited? Alright, and I think with that, we're going to be done for the day. But before we do that, one of the last things that we do on Wednesday is I talk about something that, really restores my faith in humanity and something I'm thankful for. Now, this would be the perfect time to go back and talk about the year in review, which has been incredible for me. And I will be talking about that as well coming off here. But I do, just in real specificity, I want to talk about how my life has changed in the last 3 weeks. Now, of course, you all look and see that this is not the studio that you've been seeing for the majority of the last year. For those of you who are watching back in the replay and don't know, I moved right after Thanksgiving. Like, pretty much had Thanksgiving dinner by myself because I knew I was going to be moving the next day. Went back to work and worked Friday, Saturday. And then after Friday, Saturday, packed up the rest of the stuff in my truck and moved across the state. And then went back a week later and got all my big furniture and stuff. And I mean, it's been an incredible year no matter what. I've learned a lot of things. A lot of things in my life have changed. You know, coming around Christmas time, especially last year, I was feeling a little bit dejected. For those of you who do remember, and I didn't make a huge deal of it at the time because it was personal for me. It was like I like you guys, but it really wasn't any of your business, and I could grieve on myself and heal on myself alone at the time. But my fiance, my girlfriend of just a little bit less than 2 years, left me on the Monday before Christmas in 2020. And come Christmas of 2021, I was feeling especially down because, you know, at that point, and I had taken some time off deliberately, like, you know, just kind of haphazardly, casually scrolling the Tinder side of it, but just not being real serious about it. Because I realized that after Rebecca left, I'd actually started looking almost immediately to try to get into something new, and wound up with somebody who was emotionally unavailable, somebody who was really into, and who could have wound up being a really good friend of mine if we hadn't tried to put romance into it. And then, you know, my third fiance, obviously. But when she left, you know, I knew we weren't compatible, but the other side of that is I was still pretty bummed about it, and I hadn't really been on a date for a year after that. It had taken me almost a year, and then just right at the beginning, after going down to Georgia for between the holidays, getting sick, and then coming back, I started to take some time, take things seriously, and clean up some things about my life. Got back on keto, started to change my attitude a little bit, really start putting myself out there and being out there, and I went on a few really cool dates, met some really cool people. I had a better 2022 than a lot of people realize. And no, for what Grant said, I'm not going to be doing a best of. Just because with the new work schedule, I really haven't had time to prepare for it. But one of the things I do want to talk about specifically on the move and the change is that I was getting very, very dejected at work. While some things in my personal life were maybe starting to look up a little bit, I felt dread going back to work every day. Like, I looked around there, and it wasn't just the normal, oh, my job sucks, and I still have to make a living, and just suck it up and go. Like, I asked myself on numerous occasions how much I really needed my job. Because I don't want to go too much into why it is, but it wasn't a good fit for me. My job, what I did, was a good fit for me, but the environment it didn't seem like it. And part of it is that I didn't have a community where I lived, and that's, again, part of the thing that I looked at when I realized that I had been apart and alone for a year, was that I didn't know anybody where I lived, and any time that I wanted to go out and hang out with somebody, it was either run down to Georgia on a whim, mostly, or go out to DC and pick up Steven and go to Florida, or be on a Discord call, which I do enjoy, by the way. Thanks to everybody who participates with those. Do not get me wrong and say that I don't appreciate you guys, because I really do when you do that. But, like, there's a point where you need to have people in person with that. And I noticed today, this is where I'm going with this and with the new job. I noticed today when I was leaving work, and somebody had said, "See you tomorrow." When I was leaving work at my old job, when somebody had said, "See you tomorrow," my most common response was, "We'll see." Because I didn't know at that time. I really, seriously, it's a joke sometimes where people say, "Yeah, I might not come to work tomorrow, I might not do this." There were serious considerations going on at that point. And maybe this will change coming down the road. And even though I actually do have to do my job all day at work, because I don't have it cleaned up to the point where, I can just work for 3 hours and be there for the other 7, like I did at my last job. I enjoy being there. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the fact that they're in a little bit of a mess, and I like these people a lot, but they're in a bit of a mess right now. I don't think it's completely of their own doing, but they're in a bit of a mess right now. And I enjoy the idea that I'm going to be going back there tomorrow and trying to work them through that and trying to change things and put my view and my experience into that place, which, again, I like these people, but there's a serious lack of experience for what we're doing over there, and I happen to have all the experience right now, but I want to implement that and show these people this is how we do this, and we can make this run smooth, we can make this run wonderfully. We have a lot of talent here. And I'm just enjoying the idea of going back there. I'm not dejected by it. And I never believed the idea where some people said sometimes a change of address can change your entire outlook on life, until I did it. And let's look around me right now. I live in a closet where the heater went out. And I still feel like I'm miles ahead of where I was when I lived down by Janesville. I work harder now than I did any day in Janesville. And yet I still feel like I'm doing better than what I was doing down there. And this isn't even just about the money, because I'm still kind of struggling right now because the moving costs were more than I anticipated them to be. But I'm still miles ahead of everything, and I'm thankful for that. That restores my faith in humanity. And I do think that there are some people out there who really could use, and I know that the millennial culture is, well, I've got to be close to family, I've got to be close to parents, and I also understand that I did move closer to my parents. Don't get me wrong, I understand what I did, and the irony of what I'm saying about here with this, but there are some people where if they take some time and look around, and maybe find a new address, a new locality, they can change a lot of the things about their lives. And for a good direction, too. So I hope that some people look to my example. They start to see where things can change. I know that some of my news gathering on contemporary is struggling, and the fact that we have to do this time change is struggling as well. But I think we're going to make it. I think we're going to do this together, and I think this is going to be great. So we'll be back here tomorrow. Oh, we need outro music for this. And the outro music doesn't need to compete against the other music. So with that, we're out of here for the day, and we'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. We'll see what some of our last news stories of the year are going to be. So come back here and join me 6 p.m. Central Time, back on time, because we're not going to see any more major upsets, outbreaks, internet stuff, or anything else, major problems with this place coming up in the near future. So come back here, join me for that, for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. Always looking forward to it. Always looking forward to see the good conversation that's coming out here, whether it be one person or whether it be 20 people. Love to see you guys here. Love to see the conversation. Love to see some of your friends come in and join us and see you guys make friends with the other people in the chat. Come back here and, well, I don't think there's anybody on Twitch right now, but if you're on Twitch, come back in, stick around, and we'll head over and find somebody to raid. We will see you tomorrow. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.